Alright guys, I am back yet again with another deck profile from Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. So this time we're doing version 1 of my Brandt Gate Seraph deck, aka Prison, aka Aurora Battle Princesses, aka Waifu Police. Here to take you to Horny Jail. But yeah, this is version 1 of the deck, which is everything up through the first additional card pass, so through the Booster Set 7. Although, like with some of my previous decks before, this deck is only using cards from the base game, so you can play it without actually purchasing any of the DLC. And this deck is one of our grade 4 decks, focused on our prison set order, and imprisoning your opponent's cards inside in order to gain various effects. So, as always, we will be going through the deck, and then we'll show it off in one card fight so you can see it in action. Which, this build actually ended up being a little bit different than I initially planned for it to be, but I tested out some stuff and I liked the way it worked, so that's what I went with. So anyway, starting as always with our ride deck, first we have our grade 0 starter, which is Aurora Battle Princess Ruby Red. So once rolled upon, if you win second, draw a card, same starter skill as always. Next for our grade 1, we have Aurora Battle Princess Kyanite Blue. So her auto ability, when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, search your deck for up to one prison card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So this card just lets you search out your prison. We are only running one copy of the prison, since that's all we need, since this card can search it out for us. So, very simple effect, but very important to the deck's function. And then she has a second auto ability that says when she's placed on Vanguard Circle, if one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you can counterblast one and soul blast one to draw a card. So we're not running any extra copies of her in the main deck, so this second ability never really gets used since she never ends up on Vanguard Circle. So yeah, we don't really have any use for that. So next for our grade 2, we have Aurora Battle Princess Resot Pink. So her auto ability, when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and imprisons it in your prison. So yeah, real quick explanation on imprisoning. Basically you just set your prison in your order zone, and then when you imprison one of your opponent's cards, you put it in your order zone underneath your prison set order, and that counts as them being imprisoned. Which a lot of cards in this deck focus on you having a certain number of imprisoned cards in order to activate their abilities. So yeah, that's how that works. But yeah, Resot Pink just lets you imprison one directly from your opponent's hand. They do get to choose, but it's cost free, so pretty good. And again, she's got a Vanguard Circle ability, continuous skill, that says if one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 2,000. So again, like with Kyanite Blue, she never really ends up on Vanguard Circle, so that second skill isn't used. We're just running her for her first skill. So then lastly, for our grade 3, we have Aurora Battle Princess Seraph Snow. So her continuous ability during your turn, if one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 10,000, and if 3 or more cards are imprisoned, this unit gets drive plus 1. So she can power herself up as well as gaining triple drive if you just have 3 inmates in your prison, which is pretty easy to get, especially with her second skill, which is an activate skill that you can use on Vanguard or Vanguard Circle. That says once per turn, you can counterblast one to choose 2 of your opponent's Vanguards and imprison them in your prison. So she lets you imprison 2 of your opponent's Vanguards, getting you 2/3 of your way to her extra drive from her first skill. So you only need one other card to imprison something in order to get that, which potentially could have been Resot Pink if your opponent didn't bail anyone out of your prison, which we'll get to that when I go over the prison order later. But yeah, pretty simple skill, but she can give you a 3rd drive check on turn 3, which is pretty useful, as well as the power-up. So that is our ride deck. Moving on to the main deck, we are starting with our grade 4s actually, since this is a grade 4 deck. So we have 4 copies of Aurora Fierce Princess Seraph Pure Light. So her auto ability, when this unit's placed on Vanguard Circle, you can Counterblast one and Soul Blast one card with Seraph and its card name. And then your opponent chooses 2 cards each from their hand, rear guards, and soul, and imprisons them in your prison. So that's a very powerful skill. Every time you ride it, you can force your opponent to imprison potentially up to 6 cards in your prison, assuming they have at least 2 rear guards out and at least 2 cards in their soul. So that can fill up your prison very quickly. It is basically just a Counterblast 1 cost, since you will always have the Seraph in your soul. Since you ride her over top of the grade 3, you can Soul Blast the grade 3 out, and then if you ride her again, you can just Soul Blast another copy of herself out. So, very useful skill in filling up your prison, which helps with her second skill, which is a continuous ability. That says, during your turn, all of your front row units get power plus 5,000 for every 2 of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison. And then if 10 or more cards are imprisoned, all of your front row units get critical plus 1. So, very, very strong skill. Massively increases the strength of your offense. If you can get the 10 cards into your prison, that'll be an extra 25,000 power to your entire front row, as well as putting all of them to double critical. So that can be very difficult for your opponent to block, especially with Pure Light's triple drive on top of that, potentially increasing your power even further. So very, very strong skill. It can sometimes be a little difficult to hit the 10 cards in your prison, especially if your opponent is playing around it by calling a bunch of stuff from your prison. However, even if you don't get the crits, you still get the power up regardless, so just the power boost alone can still be very effective. So that's our only grade 4 in the deck, so moving on to the grade 3s, we just have 1 copy of Aurora Battle Princess Launcher Charlene. So her continuous skill during the battle that this unit attacked. Your opponent cannot call normal units from hand to Guardian Circle and cannot play Blitz orders from hand. So, very cool guard restrict ability. Stops them from using any and all normal units from their hand. So that does include Sentinels, so she can't be perfect guarded. Stops Blitz orders as well, so they can't even use like Elementaria Sanctitude to perfect guard either. Basically, if they want to guard her, they do have to use just triggers or intercepts in most cases. So she can be very difficult to guard, especially with the big power boost from Seraph Pure Light. However, she does have a drawback in the form of her second continuous ability that says, if the number of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison is 5 or less, this unit cannot attack. So you do have to have a minimum of 6 inmates in your prison in order for her to be able to do anything, which is why I'm only running her at 1. You don't want to get a bunch of copies of her clogging up your hand, especially if you can't get the 6 inmates in order to let her do anything. You'll wind up with just a bunch of useless cards. So she can be pretty powerful, but I would just keep her at 1 since you do have to meet that condition in order for her to be useful at all. So that's all of our grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s, we're running 2 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Agra Rouge. So her continuous ability when she's on Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle says, if 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000, shield plus 10,000. So she can be a 15k attacker or a 15k shield, which makes her pretty versatile. She also has an auto ability that says when this unit's placed on Rearguard Circle, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and imprison it in your prison. So this is another skill that lets you imprison some of your opponent's cards. It does require them to have a front row rear guard, which in most cases they will. But yeah, she can snag one of your opponent's rear guards with that second skill, and then her first skill lets her be useful in both offense and defense. So pretty versatile card overall. And due to the way her continuous skill is worded, she gets that extra shield power regardless of if she intercepts or if she's just called directly to Guardian Circle from your hand. So yeah, pretty good card all around. So next we're running 3 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Accuse Macarite. So her auto ability, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle from hand, you can Soul Blast 1, and your opponent imprisons the top card of their deck in your prison face up. Then if 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So again, another imprisoning card. This one is very useful if your opponent doesn't have any rearguards out on their field, since it lets you imprison from the top of your opponent's deck instead. So pretty easy way to grab another inmate if you need one, even if they don't have any rearguards. And then she also gains a little power boost as well. So next we are running 2 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Barrage Ultra? I guess is how you pronounce that, I don't know. But anyway, she's got an auto ability. When your opponent's unit is retired from rearguard circle or guardian circle during the battle that this unit attacked, imprison that retired card in your prison. So this can just be a really annoying card. If you attack into their Vanguard and they guard it, then you get an inmate. If they no guard it, then you get a hit on their Vanguard. If you attack into a rearguard and they guard it, you get an inmate. And if you attack into a rearguard and they no guard it, you still get an inmate. So pretty much no matter what they do with this card, it's going to benefit you in some fashion. I guess unless they like guard with a blitz order or something. That's really the only way for you to not gain some advantage off this card. So pretty useful. So next we're running 2 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Perio Turquoise. So her continuous ability during your turn. If 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000. So again, basic power up skill. And then she's also got an auto ability when she's on front row rearguard circle. That says when your opponent's card imprisoned in your prison is placed on rearguard circle, that unit gets power minus 5,000 until end of turn. So, like I said, the prison does have an ability that lets your opponents call stuff from your prison to rearguard circle. So if they take advantage of that ability to try to get some of their cards back, this card punishes them for that by reducing the power of any units they call from your prison. So that can be a good way to mitigate the negative effects of your opponents bailing out their own units. So next we are running 1 copy of Aurora Battle Princess Dairy Violet. So her auto ability, when this unit is put on Guardian Circle, if 1 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your units, and it cannot be hit by a grade 2 or lower unit's attack until end of that battle. So this card basically acts as an extra perfect guard for any of your opponent's grade 2 or lower units. So that can be very useful. It is a little situational since not every deck uses, grade 2 or lower attackers. But if they do have one, it's basically a pretty easy to use perfect guard, requiring just a Soul Blast and 1 or more cards in your prison. So, pretty useful card. So next we are running 1 copy each of the 2 Aurora Battle Princess normal orders, which neither of these cards are really necessary. I'm kind of just running them because I feel like it. But we are running 1 copy of Moment of Capture Aurora Battle Princess 24-hour coverage. So this is a normal order that you can play with a Soul Blast 1. And when you play it, if your opponent's hand has 4 or more cards, they choose a card from their hand and imprison it in your prison. Then if 3 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you can choose one of your units and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this is another useful card if they don't have any rearguards out and you need some more inmates. It lets you imprison a card from their hand while also powering up one of your units. So again, this card isn't really necessary in any sense. I just thought it was kind of cool, so I decided to use it at 1. So next we have our other normal order, which is 1 copy of Aurora Battle Princess Dragnet Intense Record of Great Pursuit. So you can play it with a Soul Blast 2, and it lets you imprison all of your opponent's back row rearguards in your prison. So again, it's not totally necessary. It is really situational. It requires your opponent to have really at least 2 back row rear guards in order to get your money's worth out of it. But if you are playing against a deck that fills up their back row, you can potentially get 3 of your opponent's cards imprisoned off of this one card. So, kind of situational, but again, I just ran it because I felt like it mostly. So next we have 3 copies of a set order, actually, which is Refablishment Dock. So you can play it with a Counterblast 1, and it's got an auto ability that says when this card is put into the order zone, you can draw a card. So it lets you cycle, and then while it's in your order zone, it's got a continuous ability that says all of your grade 2 rear guards get boost. So this card is the one that I tested out and actually ended up liking a lot more than I expected to. As you may have noticed, we are running quite a high grade 2 count in this deck. So this card just gives all of your grade 2s boost, so you can fill up the majority of your field with grade 2s and still be able to attack at full strength. Also, its first skill, letting you cycle through your deck, can be useful in order to draw into the combo pieces that you need. So yeah, I was a little unsure of this card at first, but I wound up testing it out and it performed really well, so I ended up going with it. So then lastly, for our grade 2s, we just have 1 copy of our Blitz order, Explosive Melting Heart. So again, you can play this with a Soul Blast 1, and it lets you choose one of your opponent's attacking units, and it gets power minus 5,000 until end of turn for each of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison. So pretty cool Blitz order. It becomes more powerful the more inmates you have in your prison. And also one thing to note, the power loss does last until end of turn. So if you use this against a restanding unit, it will weaken both of their attacks. So again, kind of situational, but it can be a pretty useful card. So that's all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 4 copies of Hyperspeed Robo Cheval Stud. So he's got an activate ability that says once per turn, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and imprison it in your prison. Then if 3 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you draw a card. So very useful skill, lets you both imprison one of your opponent's cards while also letting you draw into another one. So very helpful with card advantage. One thing to note, that even if they are out of rear guards or something, and you can't imprison any of your opponent's cards, as long as you already have the 3 in your prison, you can still get the draw off of it. So if you're desperate for the draw, you can just use that and not worry about the imprisoning part of the skill. So very useful card. Also, he's basically just straight up a fucking transformer, so that's pretty cool too. So next for our grade 1s, we have our Sentinels, which is 4 copies of Violate Dragon. So basic perfect guard. Of course, again, no Elementaria Sanctitude in this deck, since it only works if your Vanguard is grade 3 or lower. So then lastly, for our grade 1s, we just have our Prison set order, which is Galaxy Central Prison Galactolus. So you can play it by resting one of your units, and its auto ability, when this card is put into the order zone, you soul charge 3. So that skill is very useful since we do have quite a few cards in this deck that soul blast for their costs. And then it's got the continuous ability that your opponent can use that says when your opponent can normal call a rear guard, they can perform the following. They can soul blast one, and if they do, they choose one of their imprisoned cards and call it the rear guard circle. Or they can counterblast one, and if they do so, they choose 2 of their imprisoned cards and call them the rear guard circle. So this allows your opponent to bail out their units from your prison by paying their resources, either a soul blast for 1 unit or a counterblast for 2. So if your opponent is smart, they'll use that to try to minimize the number of cards imprisoned in your prison at any time in order to keep Seraph Purelight from being at full strength. But yeah, this is the absolute key card of the deck that you must have in order for the deck to function. Which, one thing to remember with this card, if you do go second, you do want to make sure that you have a grade 1 or lower in your hand that you don't mind calling the rear guard, since it does require you to rest one of your units to play it. If you don't have anything to call, you'll have to end up resting your Vanguard and screwing yourself out of a Vanguard attack that turn. So you do want to keep that in mind. Alright, so that's all the grade 1s. Moving on to grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 7 crits, 4 draw, 4 heal, and 1 over. So starting first with our crit triggers, we have 3 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Loras Yellow. So just our vanilla crit. Next we have 4 copies of Patrol Robo Decker Cop. So it's the crit with a skill. At the end of the battle it boosted, you can put it into your soul and give someone plus 2k. So you can use that skill if you really need the soul, which again we are using quite a bit of soul blast skills in this deck. So the option is there if you need it. Next for the draws, we have 4 copies of Ameliorate Connector. Draw with a skill. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000. So 10k shield, definitely want that one. And then for our heals, we have 4 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Treyus Green. So just the vanilla heal. As always, if you want to run the effect ones, you can. And then lastly, our 1 over trigger. Star Dragon Deity of Infinitude, Eldo Breath. So his additional effect, double the power and critical of all of your front row units until end of turn. So, as always, extremely broken skill from this over trigger, especially with Seraph Pure Light. If you got her at full strength, and then you happen to check into this, your entire front row is going to be a minimum of 4 critical, and just absolutely insane power numbers. So, very, very powerful card. So yeah, that is the deck, so we will go ahead and have our 1 fight with it. And let's see, we'll fight Haru.
Are you ready?
And we will be going first.
Stand up, Vanguard.
Alright, so let's drop the straw trigger to ride Kyanite Blue. And we can use her skill to search out our prison, which we will go ahead and play by resting our Vanguard, which will let us soul charge 3. And then we can just end our turn. And we'll let that through. Alright, so we'll drop a Cheval Stud to ride Reset Pink, and use her skill to imprison 1 from her hand, which was her over trigger. Alright. So we will go ahead and call Cheval Stud and Macarite, and we'll use her skill to Soul Blast and imprison the top card of her deck, which was crit trigger. So we will go ahead and play Refablishment Dock as well, just to get it set up for later. And we'll get the draw. So let's see, we'll go ahead and attack with Cheval Stud first. And then we can attack with our Vanguard.
ガードにアタックノーガードドライブチェックヒールトリガー
We get a heal trigger, which we do get. So we'll give that power to Macarite.
パワープラスダメージチェッククリティカルトリガー
She gets a crit
クリ
trigger.
ティカルプラスパワープラス
So then Macarite can
ヴァンガ
attack,
ードにアタック
and she guards.
ガードターンエンド私のターンドローライト能力発動
She has superior called Bedivere.
コールヴァンガード攻撃
And we will let that through.
ノーガードドライブチェックダメージチェックヴァンガード攻撃
And we'll let that through
ノ
as
ーガー
well.
ドダメージチェックターン終了私のターンドロー
Okay, so let's drop. We'll drop that heal trigger, I guess,
セラスホワイトにライド
to ride Seraph Snow. And then, let's see, we'll use. We'll just use Chevalstad's ability to Counter Blast and Soul Blast.
発動
And we'll imprison one of our rear
監獄に
guards.
収容
And then we'll get to draw as well. So then, let's see. We'll go ahead and... It'll only get us one rear guard, but we'll use Seraph Snow's ability
大砲撃の開幕開幕
and imprison our other rear guard.
監獄に収容
And then we'll move Chevalstad back and we'll call another Macarite
コール
and use her skill
スキル発動
to Soul Blast and imprison the top card of her deck again.
パワープラス
So that gives us 5. And let's see, I think we're going to stop there for now. So we'll just go ahead and attack with our Vanguard first,
ヴァンガードにアタックノーガード
which does have triple
ドライ
drive.
ブチェックドライブチェックドライブチェックそんじゃ行くにゃーダメージチェック
Alright, so then we'll attack with Macarite next.
ノーガード
She lets that through as well.
信頼ダメージチェックヒールトリガー
But she gets a heal trigger, which she does get.
パワープラス
So then we can attack with our other Macarite.
ヴァンガードにアタックノーガード
And she lets it through too.
ダメージチェックターン
Alright, so we got her at 4. And we got a handful of Pyrolytes.
能力発動能力発動
And she's gonna bail 2 out of her prison.
能力発動ステリオルコールヴァンガードを攻撃
And let's see, we just need 5 to block that, so we'll intercept with Macarite.
インターセプトヴァンガー ンガードを攻撃
And we'll let that one through.
ノーガードドライブチェックドライブチェックヒールトリガー
She gets another heal trigger, which again she gets.
パワープラス一刀両断ダメージチェックヴァンガードを攻撃
And we'll let that through
ノー
too.
ガードダメージチェッククリティカルトリガー
We get a crit trigger that is wasted.
クリティカルプラスパワープラスターン終了スタンド&ドロー
Alright, so now we can ride Seraph Pure Light
セラフィアライトにライド
and use her ability to Counter Blast and Soul Blast Seraph Snow
冷たい檻の中へようこそ
and imprison 2 from her Soul Hand and Rear Guards. Which brings us to 9 in our prison. So we will go ahead and call Agra Rouge
コール
and use her skill
スキル発動
to Soul Blast
監獄
and
に
imprison our last one, which gives us 10. So our entire front row gains a crit. And let's see, we're gonna move Macarite back and call Perio Turquoise to our front row. And let's see, I think we will stop there. And we will just go ahead and attack with our Vanguard first.
ヴァンガードにアタック
And she perfect guards.
能力発動完全防御ドライブチェックヒールトリガー
And then we get a heal trigger, which we do get. So we'll heal and we'll give that power to Agra Rouge.
パワープラスドライブチェックドライブチェックドロートリガー
Nice, I'll get a draw trigger too. So we'll give that power to Perio
パワー
Turquoise.
プラス
So then we'll attack with Agra Rouge.
ヴァンガードにアタック
58,002 crit.
ノーガード
And she has to let it through.
被害甚大ダメージチ
So
ェック
that'll put her to 5.
ダメージチェッククリティカルトリガー
She gets a crit trigger.
クリティカルプラスパワープラス
So then we can attack with Perio Turquoise, boosted by Macarite.
ヴァンガード
For
にアタック
60,002 crit.
ノーガード
Oh, she's got to let that one through too.
甚大ダメージチェッククリティカルトリガー
And that crit doesn't help, so we got her. All right.
パワープラス
So there you go. That was our Seraph Prison deck. Very cool deck. I do like the way this works with Refablishment Dock. I was a little iffy on it at first, but I think it turned out quite well. So yeah, I will be back soon with more deck profiles. I think next up we do have Kyrie. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.